minor conversation about him. But you shouldn't talk about Al like that when he's not here.
He's not orange. He's pale.
That's just because of the filter. That RuPaul's Drag Race filter.
The RuPaul's Drag Race filter is someone else doing your makeup.
Oh. And Vaseline on the filter.
You guys doing anything for Christmas?
I will probably be at home playing video games, you know.
Nice.
I'll be doing the same, but, you know, I'd like to get a new console, but not a PS4 because there's going to be no Cyberpunk 2077 for a while.
They pulled it from the Sony store. That's great and terrible at the same time.
4, 3, 2.
Welcome to Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only LGBTQ daily evening news. It's time to queer up the news.
The world's first live daily queer evening news show, Out of the Closet and Into the Headlines on Q News Tonight.
So good evening, LGBTQ world. It is 7 p.m. Tuesday, December 22nd, and we are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we are going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight. Thank you for joining Queer News Tonight. This is a live, unedited LGBTQ evening news show. Whatever happens, you'll see it. This evening, we bring you the news and perspective representing the LGBTQ community from South Florida, America, and across our world. I'm your Queer News Tonight anchor, David Hopkins. Tonight, let's welcome guest anchor Gordon Woodworth III. They are our genderqueer, non-binary Gen Zer host on Gay Town Hall, live every Thursday night at 8 p.m., and they're currently a data entry and triage specialist at the nonprofit organization Broward House, as well as now a notary public helping the LGBTQ community get legally married for free. Good evening, Gordon.
Thank you. And in that long biography, you didn't mention that I was a pagan. So to all of those who celebrated the solstice last night, happy solstice, happy Yule, and happy Alban Arthan.
Mm-hmm. Next, let's welcome guest anchor Cal Gajraj. He is a business strategist and international consultant in marketing and public relations. Good evening, Cal.
Good evening.
I feel like you got shorted on your bio, and that's all we're going to get.
It's okay. It's all over Gordon.
All right. Well, tonight we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast. And here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Tuesday, December 22nd. First, we queer up Goodbye 2020. We're bringing you 2020's top 10 national LGBTQ news stories. Did you get them right? In 2020, the nation faced two existential threats: an out-of-control novel coronavirus pandemic that killed nearly 25,000 LGBTQ people in less than 12 months, and an erratic, self-obsessed Republican president that basically has destroyed all American norms and even now trying to destroy American democracy. But Al's on vacation. No, I'm kidding. We're talking about Trump. 2020 is beyond. Full stop. Beyond. So we take one last moment to close this terrible year to remind us all what we've lived through. The top 10 LGBTQ stories of 2020. How many did you remember?
Number 10. Gay man appointed to cabinet-level position. President Trump named an openly gay man to a cabinet-level position on February 20th. Michigan-born Richard Grinnell, a longtime Republican gay activist and staunch Trump supporter, became the nation's new acting director of national intelligence.
Number 9. An expanded congressional caucus. 2 African-American gay men who won seats in the U.S. House in November, bringing to 11 the number of openly LGBTQ people in the U.S. Congress. This included the first African-American LGBTQ member of Congress.
Number 8, Buttigieg becomes a contender. At the end of January 2020, Pete Buttigieg was in an unprecedented position for an openly gay presidential contender. Buttigieg won the first primary in Iowa.
Number 7, Buttigieg named to cabinet. Following Joe Biden's election as the next president, thank God, there was much anticipation about the possibility of an important appointment for Pete Buttigieg. On December 16th, Biden held a special news conference to announce his appointment of Buttigieg as his Secretary of Transportation. It marked the first time an openly LGBTQ person has been appointed to a full-fledged seat on a presidential cabinet.
Number 6. Supreme Court tackles the religious rights to bias. In February, the U.S. Supreme Court announced it would review a lower court decision that held a Catholic foster care agency could discriminate against same-sex couples. It was troubling news for LGBTQ legal activists. The Supreme Court could likely be the most important story of 2020 to the LGBT community, but it affects 2021 and beyond.
Number 5. The Supreme Court rules Title VII counts. In what was perhaps the most stunning U.S. Supreme Court victory in history for LGBTQ people, the nation's highest court announced a 6-3 decision June 15th that holds a federal law barring discrimination on the basis of sex in employment also bars discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender status.
Number 4. Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies. The most important LGBTQ supportive justice in U.S. Supreme Court history died in September.
Number 3, racial reckoning in a powerful movement following a steady stream of incidents around the country in which white police officers killed unarmed black men. Black Lives Matter, started by 3 black women, 2 of whom identify as queer, organized peaceful protests that attracted the support and participation of millions of people. George Floyd will be one of those most remembered names of 2020.
Number 2, a new president is elected. Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden won the popular vote for president on November 3rd and the Electoral College vote on December 14th. There was conflicting information over how strongly LGBTQ voters supported Biden. His defeat of Donald Trump will likely go down in history as one of the most important moments of the 21st century, and mostly because Trump was a maniacal despot who will go down in history in the same bucket as Stalin, Khrushchev, Castro, and more.
Number 1 LGBTQ story of 2020. COVID-19 changed everything. Queer News Tonight had its premiere broadcast with anchor Al Ferguson on Monday, January 6th. On that broadcast, a mysterious new virus was reported by this broadcast in Wuhan, China. Queer News Tonight has reported on coronavirus in every broadcast of 2020, including tonight.
Trillions lost, millions infected. To date, nearly 25,000 LGBTQ Americans are dead. We have reported that nearly 50% of our Pride centers nearly closed. Our sex lives, our LGBTQ business, nothing was untouched in our lives because of COVID-19.
No, some of us were because of the sex lives, but at It's Happening Out, host Ron Bernesky was one of the first LGBTQ people in South Florida to die of COVID. You likely watched live infections spread on It's Happening Out. If we were reporting the top 10 LGBTQ stories of the last century, it's almost certainty that COVID-19 would still top that poll. So those are our top 10 stories of 2020. Did we get them right? Let us know.
It's been a wild year. I mean, the fact that coronavirus is on there, that's the top event for everybody, not just the gay community. It has fundamentally changed our lives and exposed the greatest inequalities that exist in our society, especially toward people who are poor or have disabilities.
I just can't believe how fast this year went by. It was basically January, February, March, and now December.
See, yeah, it feels like January, February, March, and December are the only months that went fast for me. The rest of it was like 4.5, 5 years long.
We're all ready to turn a page.
Oh, yes. New book, forget new chapter. Next, we queer up South Florida. Miami New Times Best of Miami 2020 awards Outshine Film Festival as Best Festival. Queer News Tonight is proud to report that South Florida's Outshine LGBTQ+ Film Festival was just awarded the title of Best Festival in Miami by New Times Best of Miami 2020 Awards. The annual Best of Miami Awards is the guide to the best people, restaurants, bars, clubs, stores, music, and more. Where many festivals had to shut down their operations this year, Outshine LGBTQ+ Film Festival offered not just one but 2 2020 festivals for audiences to enjoy, with screenings both virtual and drive-in of dozens of queer films that included such gems as Dry Wind, Ask Anybody, The Strong Ones, and Summer of '85. Outshine has been a shimmering reminder that there are still ways to enjoy a film festival without sitting in a packed theater. Happening Out Television Network is proud to continue to serve as Outshine's digital television sponsor through our embracement and coverage of their amazing festival programs, as well as our specialty guest interviews with the directors and talent from their LGBTQ films, documentaries, and shorts programs. From us here at Queer News Tonight and Happening Out Television Network, we want to say congratulations on all of Outshine's success and to winning the award of Miami New Times Best Festival. And we look forward to supporting you through 2021.
And thank you for doing the work that you do and exposing our culture to a wider audience. Because when a not gay publication awards a gay organization for supporting and celebrating gay culture, that's a big deal, especially in a state where we are run by Republicans and our rights aren't very respected. It's a big deal.
And also congratulations, all arts organizations suffered this year, and kudos to them for being innovative, and the entire drive-in concept was brilliant.
Yeah, as an officer for a charity organization myself, any kind of events or fundraising or anything is so difficult to do this year. Outshine has managed to hit it out of the ballpark twice, while not only bringing content to the people who would normally go see it, but also opening up to people across the country and around the world because it's digital this year.
And we needed it. We were alone in quarantine. So next, we're going to queer up gay culture. Grindr data pinpoints where all the tops are. December is a natural time to look back, and that appears to be true even for Grindr. In a year-end feature called Grindr Unwrapped, the app used stats from its 13 million gay, bi, trans, and queer users. Here's what Grindr found. Which country came out on top, as in position? Top countries, pun intended, were Morocco, India, Nigeria, Chile, and Israel as the countries with the highest percentage of tops. That begs the obvious question. Grindr said, quote, behind every successful top is a power bottom, unquote. Reads the next slide. Vietnam, Sweden, Thailand, Peru, and South Africa earned top or bottom marks. Don't forget about verse. Contrary to what some guys might tell you, verse is very much a thing, and you'll likely encounter guys who can do it all in Venezuela, Guatemala, Argentina, Mexico, and Australia. For a look at all the intel gleaned from a year of chatting, including which cities are the most active, how many photos were sent, and what the most popular emoji was, spoiler, it was the eggplant, read the results on Grindr. If you can stop cruising long enough, that is.
Thank goodness my passport is updated.
Yeah, I can tell you our city is probably one of the most active. I can pull up Grindr and not see more than like 1,500 feet before my user limit's reached.
Truly, Grindr is doing the Lord's work with this one, because the other nickname for Fort Lauderdale is Fort Bottomsdale.
Why do you think I live here?
So we need to know where the tops are. So yeah, Grindr, pinpoint that shit. We need to know.
There's like 6 of us in town.
The Lord's work.
Yeah, all 6 of them.
And now it's time to queer up politics. LGBTQ plus people and equality voters overwhelmingly supported Joe Biden. There has been much confusion on the degree of LGBTQ support of Biden-Harris in the presidential election. But according to a new poll, an overwhelming majority of LGBTQ plus people and voters who support them cast their votes for President-elect Joe Biden in the 2020 election. The poll, released by polling firm GQR and Human Rights Campaign, show 83% of LGBTQ plus voters supported Biden, and 79% of equality voters, who are people who support candidates who are supportive of LGBTQ plus rights and will vote against candidates who aren't, back the president-elect. HRC data shows 29% of equality voters voted in 2018. That number increased to 37% in this year's election, according to HRC.
Next, we queer up religion. Pastor wants kids taken to drag queen story hour removed from their parents. A high-profile right-wing pastor with a history of anti-LGBTQ statements has done it again. Virginia's E.W. Jackson runs his own radio show and streams via Facebook to his followers. On his Facebook show, The Wisdom Meditation, last week he discussed the Bible, but then went off on a tangent about drag queen story hour, which occurs in libraries around the country. Jackson said, quote, "This is child abuse to take these children to be entertained by these perverse individuals whose lives are a moral sewer. You want to live that way? It's a free country. Live that way. If adults want to be a part of such gross, disgusting entertainment, you have a right to do that. But child abuse is what I would call taking children to see one of these freaks go through a whole lot of sexual garbage, trying to instill this mess in the minds of toddlers and kindergartners. A drag queen is not a normal human being, and the stupid parents who take their children into this mess need to be dope slapped. they need to have their children taken away from them, unquote. Right. Sounds like churches and some pastors to me. To our Queer News Tonight viewers, we're happy to bring you the comedy news of the day.
Next, we queer up the world. India has launched a workplace equality index for the LGBTQ+ community. India made history this week for their steps to support the LGBTQ community. India's groundbreaking equality index is a promising prospect of wider recognition of the LGBTQ+ community in more formal and professional environments. The index is India's first regulation for employers to measure LGBTQ+ inclusion and visibility in the workplace. The new index, which is a comprehensive benchmarking tool for employers to measure their progress on lesbian, gay, bi, and trans inclusion in the workplace, measures 9 areas, which are the following: policies and benefits, employee life cycle, employee network group, allies and role models, senior leadership, monitoring, procurement, community engagement, and additional work. Over 65 organizations registered for India's Workplace Equality Index, with over 15 organizations qualifying for gold, silver, and bronze recognition. However, 13 did not qualify for the minimum threshold of LGBTQ+ inclusivity. This new Equality Index legislation has arrived 2 years after the Indian Supreme Court's historic decision to repeal Section 377 in 2018, which criminalized sexual consensual acts between adults. Since then, India has seen a huge step forward towards LGBTQ political recognition.
And that's our queer headlines for today. So let's catch up on the LGBTQ news surrounding COVID-19 with our special segment called Quarantine Quickies. Tonight, we report the devastating effect coronavirus has had on the American and worldwide LGBTQ community in total cases and deaths. And that is our COVID-19 news for tonight. Next, we report that Happening Out Television Network helps support our LGBTQ community. An example is Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. We are broadcasting from our permanent set in supporting that partnership. The network broadcasts the largest LGBTQ religious broadcast in the world, with more than 30,000 watching every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, and it's totally live. We encourage you to tune in. Our campaign of sponsorship proudly supports Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church. Watch this.
I'm Rihanna Petrone, Dancing Diva of the Palm Beaches and South Florida Gay News Best Drag Queen for Palm Beach County, and Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
We'd also like to thank our set designer, Concepto Modern Living, here in Fort Lauderdale, for making this set in this amazing queer church campus possible.
Finally, we thank Queer News Tonight's hotel sponsor, Best Western I-95 Fort Lauderdale. This is the closest and best choice to the famous Wilton Drive, and our hosts and guests stay at this LGBTQ ally partner. We encourage you to stay here when visiting South Florida.
Well, welcome to week 33 of Q's Q&A on LGBTQ health and pandemic. This segment is unique in America, answering your LGBTQ community questions about our unique health needs. We are proud to have Queer News Tonight health anchor Dr. Howard Grossman.
He is an American pioneer in HIV/AIDS medical treatment and was the executive director of the American Academy of HIV Medicine. He is a nationally recognized medical expert and proud member of our LGBTQ community. Good evening, Dr. Grossman.
Good evening. How are you?
You good? And before we move on to this week's viewer questions, what are your thoughts over this week's health news for our community?
Well, a lot of news this week, David. Certainly, the rollout of the vaccine has been really kind of amazing. I actually got my vaccine yesterday. I can tell you my arm hurts a little bit, but I was able to work out this morning. It didn't stop me, and I didn't have any other side effects. No fever, no chills, nothing like that.
Yeah, I saw some other members of your staff have been vaccinated the past 2 days as well.
Exactly. So thanks to my local hospital, they have called in to vaccinate staff of anybody, the voluntary attendings, as well as the staff in the hospital. So that's really great. Lots of people are calling. Lots of my patients are asking me, when am I going to get my vaccine? Every state has a different protocol. Basically, I think every state, the first line is frontline healthcare workers. In most states are following CDC guidelines, and the next group will be essential workers. In Florida, where our governor thinks that he knows better than the CDC, the next group of vaccines is actually going to nursing home residents, which is fine. But, you know, the people who are out there driving the buses, the policemen, the firemen who are, you know, laying their lives on the line, they really should be getting vaccinated. After that is probably going to come people over the age of 75. Next will be people between 64 and 75. And after that will come, and then a group of the people who are 18 to 64 who have serious illness. After that will come probably everybody else. Okay. So that's pretty much the way it's rolling out across the country.
And just a quick question, because I know a lot of people have mentioned it. There is the new mutation that's popped up in the UK. Do you think this vaccine will be fine for that?
Next thing I was going to talk about. So far, the answer is we don't know. The answer that we're getting from all the medical experts is probably it's going to be fine, because our immune response, even though this virus has 23 mutations, and some of them are in the spike protein, which is where we're targeting the neutralizing antibodies, our immune system develops antibodies against multiple targets. And so you can have some of these mutations and still the vaccine should work. And it's important to understand about this virus that it appears to be transmitting more easily from person to person. But a lot of that has to do with statistical modeling. And that's still something that's rather controversial. There's another virus that's mutated in a slightly different way in South Africa that also seems to be transmitting more easily, also transmitting through children more easily, both of these. The bottom line is, though, that our preventive measures that we've been using, the masks, the social distancing, the staying out of crowded places, works just as well with those viruses as with anything else. So the people who are getting this are people who are not taking precautions.
Gotcha. Well, let's jump right into our viewer questions for this week.
Viewer question number 1. You've mentioned consistent messaging is key to control COVID. Do we have that yet?
No, I mean, it's very hard to have consistent messaging when you have all these conspiracy theorists out there and people who don't know what they're talking about. And that's sad. And when you have people like our governor in Florida who thinks that he's more of an expert than the experts, you know, that's very sad. You know, things like today, the Florida Supreme Court decided that it was unconstitutional to force bars to close at midnight, as if they're somehow essential services. And so you're going to continue to get these super spreader events because people are out there, you know, at the bars all night. And the longer they go drinking, the more likely they are to not take precautions. So, you know, I think that that's a big problem. We still have a president who is, well, he's, besides being non-compos mentis, he's just absent completely from this. And I think, you know, I understand from one of the hospitals that I work at that a number of their nurses on the floor, young nurses, are not getting vaccinated because they heard a story that people become sterile from the vaccine, which is completely untrue. But that's the kind of information that's getting out there. And I notice, especially in communities of color, I'm very, very concerned that disinformation campaigns are out there and people are scared to get the vaccine.
I'm glad you commented on that, because one of the things that I keep hearing consistently is about the safety and the efficacy of vaccines. So I wonder if you would comment on that, especially in regards, if we're going to talk about the gay community, especially people who are HIV positive or otherwise immunocompromised. I've heard several people say they don't want to get the vaccine because they're HIV positive and they're afraid of getting it for that reason. Could you comment on that?
Sure. Well, first of all, most people who are HIV positive are not really immunocompromised. If people have normal T cells, their immune systems are just as able to fight things off as anybody else. And so that's important to understand, because people automatically think of old AIDS, when people were in fact immunocompromised. So that's number one. Number two, there's nothing live in this vaccine. This is messenger RNA. So this is basically tricking your body into creating proteins on the surface of your cells that fool your body into thinking it's seeing the virus. It's not seeing the virus. It's just seeing, proteins from the virus, and so it makes antibodies. So it's utilizing your own cellular mechanisms to fool your body into creating immunity. And that should be safe for everybody. And there were some HIV positive people, I understand, included in some of the studies, but not a lot. But there were a number of HIV activists who very clearly pushed hard for both Moderna and for Pfizer to include HIV positive people. Do we have an enormous amount of safety data? No, we have, from probably May or April until now. So, that's as much as we could have. And we certainly know how devastating the virus is. So the safety data looks good, because the most common, if there's going to be a reaction, and most people don't have a reaction, is an allergic reaction, a slight allergic reaction. When you talk about people getting fever and things like that, that's your immune system going to work. So a transitory fever is not unusual with a number of vaccines that we have.
Okay, go.
Dr. Grossman, our second viewer question is, I've heard in social media that overall deaths are down in 2020. Can that be true?
Well, I'm not really aware of that. I don't see how you have 3,000 people dying a day of COVID and overall deaths are down. We know that nursing homes have been devastated, so our older population is dying more rapidly. I'm not sure where a statistic like that would come from.
Yeah.
The CDC said it had to do with the year not being over, and that just the reporting takes time to get in. So of course the deaths look lower.
Yeah. And I imagine it also includes, there's probably, if people not traveling, you probably get fewer travel-related deaths and stuff that are not related to disease at all. But yeah, it's a skewed statistic.
It's it's a World Trade Center every day. Yeah. That's sort of unbelievable.
Our final viewer question: my grandparents are now vaccinated. Can I visit them right away?
Well, okay, that's a tough question. I mean, obviously, the vaccine after the second dose, 2 weeks after the second dose, people are 95% protected. So that's really good. Again, we've talked about this before. The vaccine doesn't necessarily prevent infection. It's preventing people from getting sick. We're still going to have to wear masks. We're still going to have to practice some of the things until the vast majority of people are vaccinated. Because you can still harbor the virus in your upper respiratory area and pass it on to other people without getting sick. So, I think, visiting your grandparents, I think if you're willing, I think we can probably, going out on a limb here, but I would say probably once they've been vaccinated, and especially after you've been vaccinated as well, then I think it's going to be okay, but I would still wear a mask. And, you don't have to be French kissing your grandparents. I think you'll be able to give them a hug and walk away, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, it's important for people to realize that the vaccine's not like putting yourself in a bubble. It's like painting with washable paint. Stuff will still stick, but your body can fight it off easier.
Exactly. And it's, I think that's a really important thing that hasn't really gotten out there. There are too many people that think, oh, I'm going to get the vaccine and I'm going to get on the first plane to Rome, Not going to happen.
Well,
we're still going to have to practice precautions.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we can get back to a much more normal life and a lot less fear.
Yeah, and I think fear is the biggest issue this year for a lot of people. Is there's so much conflicting information. But here on Queer News Tonight, we have been steady with the wear a mask, wash your hands, since January.
And it works.
Yeah.
I think people need to realize that they have spent the last 8 months protecting themselves. If you stayed negative for 8 months and you were taking precautions, you know what works. Mm-hmm. And people need to, a lot of people are very, very panicked, but they need to realize that they've learned a lot in the last 8 months about how to protect themselves.
Exactly. Well, that is tonight's Q's Q&A on LGBTQ health and the pandemic. We're here every Tuesday with Dr. Howard Grossman to answer your medical questions. If you need medical assistance, we encourage you to contact Midway Specialty Care Center with 10 locations in Florida, and especially Dr. Howard Grossman here in Wilton Manors and all across South Florida. Thank you again, Howard, and we'll see you after the new year.
Thank you, David. Have a good holiday.
You as well. So we end tonight's broadcast with The Big Finish, today's silly or news that entertains the LGBTQ community. The Big Finish. Cher explains why she has loved gay people since she was 9 years old. Watch this. Do we have sound?
But especially in the LGBTQ community.
Yes.
And that's pretty something. And you have a son who's
Right.
a transgender son, Chaz. And do you think that is what has made you sympathetic to the LGBT community, or did you have that going in? Did the fact
At 9 years old, I knew. Like, one day I came home and there were these two men in my living room. And I was thinking, why haven't we ever had these kind of guys around? Because these guys are like the coolest. And that was my beginning into the gay world. And we were always like this because gay people don't feel like they fit in, and I never felt like I fit in.
Too, and we have forever. And I want to point out that she didn't support the gay community just when she figured out that her son was trans. She supported us way back when, during the AIDS crisis. She was one of the people that said, don't be afraid of people who have AIDS.
Mm-hmm. She's been a lifelong advocate.
I appreciate that, when she was 9 back at the turn of the century, because she's going to live forever.
Leave her alone.
Parts of her are quite old.
Back in 1812.
Yeah, but I love that, the fabulousness of some of her mother's visitors inspired her to be fabulous and inspire gay people. It's like a cycle of glitter. It's amazing. The Big Finish. Family of U.S. teen jailed in Cayman Islands for breaking COVID protocols asked Trump for help. Yeah.
Yeah, so I heard about this. So she went to the Cayman Islands and broke the quarantine that she was required to be on for 14 days. It was like 14 days in a hotel with a tracker, and she abandoned the tracker and went off to go hang out with her boyfriend or whoever. And now she's been arrested and is possibly seeking jail time for doing this. And now the family's looking to the U.S. Embassy to try and rescue her out of here. And I don't feel bad for her. I come from a military family, and in the military, they tell all of the enlisted that if you're in another country and you break the law and you're arrested by the jurisdiction that you're in, you will have to serve your time or do whatever is required. So if our very best don't get away around the law, why should this person?
Yep. Choices have consequences.
Yeah, white privilege is a thing, but some people who are used to it here in the U.S. don't realize that it doesn't necessarily work the same in other countries.
No.
The Big Finish. The Grinch delivers the Yule log in bisexual Whoville triad on SNL.
This was everything. And Pete being the Grinch was the best choice because he's already like awkward and weird, and it just flowed so well.
Pete Davidson's amazing.
Yeah, it's best.
Yeah, you know, everyone likes to get their Yule log delivered during the holiday. It happens. Well, that's today's news for the LGBTQ community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ evening news show. On behalf of anchors Gordon Woodworth III and Kyle Gajraj, we wish you the happiest of holidays in a year and in news that is the hardest we've ever experienced. Difficult to find the joy of the season.
This is the last broadcast of Queer News Tonight of 2020. All of the anchors, production, and staff are taking a much-needed break and will return on Monday, January 4th.
So as we finish the last moments of Queer News Tonight 2020, we hope you'll be home for Christmas. But remember, even if you're not, 2021 is coming. Our world will be better. If only in our dreams. Sorry to torture you all singing.
Judy!
Merry Christmas, LGBTQ world, and Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas.
Good night.